There we go, and we are live. Hello and welcome everyone to CircuitStream's UX and XR Developers Working Together workshop. Today, we're going to be learning about effective communication between XR designers and XR developers. I'm your host, Brendan, and shortly we'll be joined by your instructor for today, Alitha Singleton. Hello, everybody. Great to see you in the audience. Before we get into it, I wanted to do a quick audio video check actually, and just let me know in the comments if you can hear me and see me, and it would be greatly appreciated. Anyone? Hello, yes, can hear and see. Yes, awesome. Okay, that is good feedback. We can continue. So also wanted to provide a quick overview of your layout here. To the top right of your interactions tab there, you'll notice a little bell icon. If any of the notifications or sounds resulting from the chat are distracting or annoying to you, go ahead and hit that bell icon and it will silence all of them. With regards to comments, feel free to engage with other audience members. We also have members of the team here who would love to chat. Any questions throughout this workshop today should be directed towards the questions tab, and that you can find at the bottom of that interactions tab there. Lastly, we also have a few polls that I want to put out there today, just to kind of gauge who's in our audience, as well as get your feedback. So the first one that I wanted to post just has to do with Unity, actually. So just wanted to know how experienced our audience is today with Unity. So if you can go check out that polls tab and vote, again, that's just going to help us kind of understand who we have with us today and where your experience level is at with that specific tool. Okay, excellent. So that's posted. And then wanted to also just introduce myself. I'm Brendan. I'm your host for today. I'm on the education team here at CircuitStream. I actually come from a background in finance and investment management, but saw where the AR/VR industry was headed and which was much more just interested in this subject matter. So made that jump. Fun fact about myself: I'm a competitive rugby player who has never broken a bone. I feel like that's a rarity. I feel like I'm a statistic somehow there. So just a good little tidbit. Now I'm hosting from Toronto, Canada. Feel free also to post in the chat where you're joining us from. I always love to know where we're reaching and who's joining us from where around the world. Anybody? Houston, Texas. Perfect. Alitha, you don't count. Just kidding. Denver, Colorado, Minneapolis, Orlando. Okay, Dallas, LA. Okay, awesome. So a lot of US folks here with us today. Holland. Okay, I think that's the furthest one yet. Awesome. Well, welcome all. Thank you so much for joining us and tuning in. A little bit more about your instructor for today, Alitha Singleton. She's a UX instructor as well as on the advisory board for our curriculums here at CircuitStream. She has 22 years of design experience across multiple platforms, and more recently is getting involved in the educational UX designer for extended reality space. So very much getting involved with education. Fun facts about Alitha: she is an ordained elder pastor at her VR MMO church, and she custom built all her own furniture to be relative to her height, which is 4'10". So a couple of interesting facts about Alitha before we get into it. In terms of our agenda for today, so I do want to do a bit of an introduction for CircuitStream. Should take about 5 to 10 minutes. Then we'll move into the main content or main portion of the workshop today, which is the UX and XR developers working together. Should take about 30 to 45 minutes for Alitha to share that information with you. And then we'll do a wrap up, share more course information from our course offerings at CircuitStream, as well as just share additional resources. So that'll take about 5 to 10 minutes. And then again, we'll do that live Q&A session at the end. It should take about 15 to 30 minutes typically, but it depends how inquisitive our audience is today. So again, any questions, direct them to the questions tab so that we can stay organized and make sure that we address all of the questions that you have. Just as a reminder, this session will be recorded and any additional files will be sent your way after we conclude. So if you have to bow out early or if you're joining us late, don't worry, everything's going to be recorded for you. So who or what is CircuitStream? So we were formed in 2015 when we identified a demand for education in the growing XR industry. Our focus is on providing the highest quality education in XR design and development, as well as for industry-leading tools such as Unity. To date, we've helped over 40,000 learners develop their technical skills around immersive and emerging tech. Now, we have team members and instructors all over the world who are passionate about accelerating the AR/VR industry, and this also helps us accommodate students across different time zones and geographies. CircuitStream is a Unity channel partner and authorized training provider. So for anyone not familiar with Unity, it is a development or physics engine that is used to create applications, games, and even productions such as film and television. Very robust, very extensive tool, and can be applied in many different ways. So our Unity certified instructors have a combined decades of experience in Unity as well as XR development. Now, we've worked with some of the largest organizations in the world, such as Walmart, Lockheed Martin, the US Navy, and that's just to name a few. So many of the names on here maybe you recognize, but we work with organizations large and small, right down to the individual learner. So CircuitStream offers flagship courses around programming, XR development, and design, as well as for Unity's very robust development or physics engine. So these are, I would say, our kind of main three flagship courses. Our XR development with Unity course is 10 weeks in duration. It consists of 3 hours a week of live instructor-led sessions. It's a beginner-friendly course for any students or professionals who are interested in adding the fundamentals of XR development to their skill set. The next cohort for that will be starting on May 17th. For our XR interaction design and prototyping course, again, it's 10 weeks long, it's beginner-friendly, and is very similarly structured in delivery to our XR development course. That would be 3 hours of live instruction each week. And this is for artists and designers who want to focus on immersion, environmental elements, and user experience. Students will learn the process of prototyping for AR and VR, and it's very popular among UI and UX designers, as well as product designers looking to upskill for emerging spatial computing platforms. Now, either of these XR-focused courses are project-driven and have been designed to help students break into exciting professions related to augmented, virtual, and/or mixed reality. We've also partnered with a number of post-secondary institutions to grant further access to this kind of education. Now, our newest and most extensive course yet revolves around launching your career as a real-time 3D developer, employing Unity as your main tool for creation. The 24-week Unity Developer Bootcamp is a career course that offers more than 5 hours of live instruction throughout the week, with an additional 5 hours of hands-on learning in labs over the weekend. You'll learn how to code in C#, manage a multitude of programs and resources integrated with Unity, and professionally manage Unity projects. There will also be a multitude of resources and career services students can access to help launch their careers in real-time 3D development. The next cohort for the Unity Developer Bootcamp will be starting April 11th, and now is actually we're in the last couple of days before the enrollment deadline, which is Monday. So if you are interested in this track, go ahead and submit your application as soon as possible. Now, you can also leverage the expertise of our instructors for anything Unity and XR related with our one-on-one project support and mentorship packages. These sessions have tons of flexibility regarding how you use this time. It can be leveraged for additional course learning, for troubleshooting and project support, or for learning about topics within XR that may not be captured in our flagship course curriculums. For example, Unreal Engine. Now, today is an intro to UX and XR developers working together. So what you're going to be learning about today is the value of UX in the development process, how to integrate design into the development process, how XR designers and developers can communicate effectively, and best practices from a UX industry veteran who works with XR. So just as a few reminders before Alitha takes over, her session should be about 30 to 45 minutes long, sometimes less, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer. Everything is going to be recorded and sent to you. So you'll receive all of the replays as well as any additional kind of resources associated to this workshop shortly after we conclude today. And then we will have the Q&A afterwards. So any questions that you have throughout the workshop, put in that questions tab, and we will certainly have time to get to them towards the end. Aside from that, sit back, relax, and soak up all this great information Alitha is going to be sharing with you. So without further ado, Alitha, would you like to join me on stage here?
Hello. Can everyone hear me okay?
Awesome. Sounds good to me. Audience.
Okay.
Oh,
And
Andrew, good to see you. Okay, well, I will get out of your way and jump back on when you are all set. Okay.
okay, so housekeeping. I've got to get my screen share working. And can you see it okay? Well, you see the screen, but you don't see the slides yet. Okay. Okay, cool. I'm going to start sharing my slides now and get started. All right. And you'll have to speak up if you can't see my slides because I can't see the chat anymore. But my name is Alitha Singleton, and today I'll be talking about the value of UX to the development process, how you can integrate UX design into the XR development process, and how UX designers and XR developers can work together to create awesome experiences. And a little bit more background about me is I'm an immersive tech UX design professional with over 22 years of experience designing across multiple technologies, including most recently extended reality. And for the past few years, I've been working to push forward UX into the XR landscape. And as a big part of that, I created a website called the UX for XR Toolkit, where I write about my learnings transitioning into the space myself from a traditional 2D UX design. And I share the best practices that I use when designing immersive experiences through videos and articles. And I'm also actively working to build up a design pattern library of how others have solved XR design problems in the past. And all of this is in hopes of helping others who want to transition into the space, not only by teaching you the foundational best practices and giving examples, but also by helping you to get practical project experience. That's my goal. And one of the ways that I'm doing that is through my weekly Twitch stream called Free Labs Class Thursdays. I play video games and VR experiences, and I talk through them from a UX designer's perspective. And since game development has a heavy and direct influence on XR development, it makes logical sense that we would study game design to help us understand better how to design quality immersive experiences. And I use critical thinking a critical thinking method called Rose Thorn Bud in that design analysis. And then I talk through how we would translate those learnings into our own XR experiences. And my goal is to help you to gain practical experience in this method as you participate live in the chat. And ideally, you would participate live, but because life happens, you could also participate asynchronously through YouTube comments. And I do check those and respond to those as well. And I'm including those links in the PDF that is going to be shared with you at the end. And before we get into UX designers and developers working together, and to make sure that we're all on the same page, we should probably quickly define UX. When people typically think of UX, they usually only think about the user interface, which consists of interface design and visual design. However, in reality, it involves so much more than just those two elements. This is only a sampling here, but all of these things tie in together to create an overall user experience that involves more than just the interface and more than just the digital experience. It all works together to create an individual's memory of an experience. The question is whether that's a good one or a bad one. And think of it like the dining experience. It's more than just the utensils or the plate that your food's on. It's the smell, the flavor, the memories that they bring back up, or new ones that you create. Did the food taste good, or did you have to spit it out in your napkin while you pretended to wipe your mouth? That's all part of an experience. Or if you think about it from a coffee shop perspective, it's the entire experience from when you pre-order through the app to when you go in and pick it up. You get your rewards added to your account. Was that process a good experience or a frustrating one? Were the employees friendly? Was it ready when you got there? Did they get your order right? all of these things, in a nutshell, it's the entire experience, not just the digital touch points. And the ultimate goal of every UX professional or practitioner is to create delightful and compelling experiences that are easy to use and ultimately make people's lives better in some way. And it's hard to get people to pay money for a service or a skill when they don't truly understand the value. And sadly, because of this, UX is usually one of the first things to get cut when budgets and timelines are tight. So let's talk about why it matters and how you can communicate that value to your team. The IEEE previously did a study on why software fails, and 3 of those top reasons are directly tied back to UX. And those are badly defined requirements, stakeholder politics, and poor communication with the customers, the development team, and the target audience. And UX can help solve those problems through user research with your target audience, stakeholder interviews to help gain alignment, usability testing to make sure it's easy and delightful for the target audience to use, and integrating the entire UX process into your project lifecycle, which will enable you to test and iterate before you even start coding anything. In 2014, Experience Dynamics calculated that the input of a UX designer can reduce the amount of time developers have to spend on rework by up to 50%. And it can reduce the overall development time by anywhere from 33 to 50% by improving decision-making and helping prioritize development tasks. And the cost of fixing an error after development is 100 times more than catching it and fixing it before development starts. So in other words, every $1 spent on UX brings a $100 return on investment through development cost savings. And I've mentioned it in one of my best practices articles that studies show that if a user has a bad experience with a brand new technology, they're more likely to consider all technology within that category to be difficult or terrible, or less likely to adopt it or to give it another chance in the future, and even when the subsequent experiences are higher quality. And therefore, it's imperative to the mass adoption of a new technology that the user experience be well thought out and well executed. Or as Frank Lloyd Wright so famously put it, it is, you can use an eraser on the drafting table or a sledgehammer on the construction site. The key takeaway is that it is much less costly to work with UX professionals to identify priorities and catch and fix problems while you're still in the design phase than it is to fix them later after the development's already started, or even more so if the project's already launched. And I won't reinvent the wheel by spending this whole talk teaching you the value of UX. And there are already many great articles out there around it and videos, and I'm including those links in that PDF that I'm sharing out. And ideally, if you're a UX professional, you want to let developers on your team participate in your user research and your usability testing. But reality says that this doesn't always happen, since they also are busy with their development tasks. However, it would still be beneficial to your team and to you if you're a developer to take the time to participate when you can and learn some of those basics of the various UX methods for yourself. And this will help your team understand why certain decisions are being made, and it will enable better team collaboration and reduce the amount of pushback, again, because of the understanding of the why, because they're witnessing it for themselves. And if you want to learn more about the various UX methods, I highly recommend this book, UX for Beginners by Joel Marsh. And if you're on a project team, I would say it's great even if you're already a designer and you've been one, because it's a great review and there may be methods in there that you haven't tried. That if you're on a project team, I would say get this for your team's library. I've done this before with project teams, and I was actually very pleasantly surprised at how the rest of the team was very interested in learning more about it. And the book would go missing because someone took it to read it, and when I was looking for it. And it made it a lot easier for me to make the case for various UX methods, and I got better buy-in from the team during planning. It's an easy read and everything's categorized, so you can quickly find and reference your information. So how does this process work? The amount of time and effort spent on each step can vary by company to company, team to team, project to project. But overall, the general process is that you learn through research, you design a potential solution, you prototype that solution just enough to click through the key scenarios, and then you validate it by conducting usability testing with target audience. And then you take those learnings and build the actual working solution. And then you repeat. All of these steps are happening continuously and simultaneously on your team. And ideally, it's a continuous process that doesn't stop for the lifetime of the project or the service that you're developing. And now I'll give you a quick example of what that might look like in practice. For the best results, UX is integrated into the entire project lifecycle from the very beginning, when the client or the boss makes the possibility of a project known. And again, that's because UX methods can help you determine whether or not you're solving the right problem and providing the right solution before you even get too far into the project to change direction very easily. And you can start at the very beginning of a project with a UX method called stakeholder interviews. And these help you make sure that your business executives, your clients, and your project team are on the same page. And it helps you to get a better understanding of what drives them. What is it that they care about? And this helps us speak to them in their own language and speak to what drives them. Because maybe their language isn't money. Maybe it's not the bottom line. Maybe it's something else. If we don't ask, we're just assuming. And then that's where communication breaks down. And getting the stakeholders aligned and everyone on the same page will not only help you to create a clear project scope, but it also helps you determine which research methods to use to validate and to learn more about the problem to solve. And the types of methods that you'll use depend on the project, such as whether you're creating a training simulation, a productivity app, a game, or a cinematic experience. It's going to vary. So one of the UX methods that we use a lot is field observations, where you go out into the target audience's normal environment and you watch how they work and perform their tasks currently. And this is beneficial for entertainment, as Pixar has been doing this for decades. It's one of the reasons they can create such impactful and convincing films. And this is always useful regardless, but I highly recommend this method, especially if you're working on a training simulation or a productivity app of some kind. And one of the most common and recommended types of research would be to conduct user interviews with your target audience to gain their perspective. And this is very important since they're the whole reason that you're creating this experience in the first place. And once you've completed your research, you then take all of those research findings and you work together as a project team to gain a shared understanding of the problem that is to be solved and to come up with a list of requirements and potential solutions. And then you start designing, where you sketch out and map the experience before any code's written. And it's like you're creating your design blueprints before you start building the house or adding an extension to it. This part of the process helps the team work together to determine any underlying foundational structures that need to be in place, reducing the need to go back and rework later, or worse, being stuck with a foundation that prevents you from providing the best solution. And again, having a professional UX designer on your team, preferably you have a designer and a researcher, will save time but the designer will help save time on the design phase and reduce development rework later, since they'll already have a strong understanding of best practices and fundamental interaction and visual design principles in mind. They already have that knowledge, so they're not having to learn it while they're doing. And since XR is only recently becoming more commonplace, professional designers are still learning the most effective methods to design for the space. And so if you're a developer and you're working with a professional designer, you're most likely going to see a hybrid of traditional methods for 2D design mixed in with game design methods and 3D design. And you may even see a lot more use of sketches and storyboards. Much of my design time is spent storyboarding and sketching interactions. either digitally or on paper. It's a good way to quickly share your ideas and your intentions with your team for rapid feedback. And it's also a good practice to have your own video clip pattern library of interaction designs that are great examples that you can draw on for inspiration for your own projects. I use video clips a lot to communicate intentions with developers and other team members, and it saves a lot of time and keeps me from having to go too in depth into design documentation. It's a major wish list item that a lot of UX designers have. We want to have a pattern library that we can just grab from and say, do it like this, but change it this way for our project. And that almost never happens, though, because there's never time, and there's always something considered more important to pay for on the budget than taking the time to create a pattern library. And that's why I've started creating one for XR specifically. You can use these and share them with your team so that you don't have to do all of that work yourself. And I recently added that to my website as a tiered content feature. A lot of the patterns are free to access, and becoming a patron will give you full access to all the patterns. And more patterns are being added regularly, so the library will grow over time. And I have actually used them myself for projects. And research has shown that having a pattern library of proven successful interfaces and design solutions to use as a reference and having an established design system can help increase your product development efficiency by up to 70%. So it's very well worth that upfront investment to have these tools for your team, whether you're creating them yourselves or using pre-existing. A design system is a combination of branded UI elements, rules around the behavior and the usage of those UI elements, plus code that developers can grab and use. Some examples that you might be familiar with are Material Design for Android or Apple's Design Resources. They both have AR components in their design systems. So if you're interested in creating mobile AR experiences, they have design systems already there for you. And there aren't really very many out there for VR yet, although one of Circuit Stream's students is actually working on one as we speak. Working on getting that in the Unity store. And Microsoft has also released MRTK for mixed reality on the HoloLens, which would be the most prominent one out there right now for XR that I'm aware of. And then once you've got a good idea, or more than one idea of the design direction, then you'll be ready to create a prototype so that you can test it with your target audience. And this could be with or without code, whichever is the most efficient for the team and best for the thing being tested. For example, UI elements could be a simple click through with no code. Whereas if you're testing how people interact with objects for various types of locomotion or something more in-depth interaction, then you might need a little more effort. For the most part, you would just be creating click-through prototypes of your key scenarios to test a design concept, not a fully baked experience. It's important not to get stuck in the code at this stage so that you can easily pivot and change design direction if needed. And if the designer knows basic Unity or Unreal, they may do what's called gray boxing to test out scale and placement of elements in 3D. Or the designer may use a designer-friendly tool like ShapesXR, which allows you to storyboard and prototype through their stage system in VR. It is free. There are paid versions too, and it's multiplayer so that you can collaborate with your team as well. And ShapesXR also has a bridge into Unity so that you can import your scenes directly into your Unity project for more iteration and development for your prototypes, and it updates in real time. There are also PC-based VR tools like Sketchbox, which allows you to storyboard in VR. Similar to ShapesXR, you can combine multiple static scenes into a sequence that you can play through to communicate design intent and rep prototype experiences and concepts. And the models and the scenes can also be imported into Unity if needed. It's just not real-time updated like Shapes that I'm aware of. And designers may also use animation tools such as Quill by SmoothStep or Tavori to handle anything from storyboarding to puppeteering to creating fully immersive film directly in VR. And there's also a technique taken from industrial design in which you create 3D props and prototypes out of basic craft supplies. and then act out that experience for early concept testing. And this is the technique that Microsoft used to develop for the prototype to test for their UX designs in the early days of development before the headset was built. It wasn't built yet, so they had to test some way. And it's a good way to design and test for technology that doesn't exist yet. And once you have a prototype ready to go, it's time to test it with your target audience. And there are going to be different approaches to testing your prototype, depending on whether you're creating something for training, a training simulation, a productivity app, a game, or a cinematic experience. And task-based usability testing is used to see if players or participants can complete a specific task or multiple tasks without assistance, like crafting an item or upgrading your gear. And play testing is used when you want to test parts of the game flow, but not the full game, to see if there are any usability or engageability issues. And then think aloud testing is when you have the player or the participant talk through what they're doing and thinking as they perform the test. And then a playthrough test is when you have the player or the participant play through a good portion or even the entire game. This is used more when you need to test the engageability of the game while still keeping an eye out for usability issues. Regardless of the approach, I want to emphasize that it's not a demo or a focus group. It's a test conducted with individuals who have not played the game before. You want to know how people will be able to use the application or the game without someone helping them or telling them how to complete the tasks. So you give them a task and then you watch them to see if they can complete it without help. And as painful as it is, you don't get to defend your design during the test. You have to stay quiet and observe their behaviors, give them some vague prompts if they get stuck, and let them finish. You take down their feedback and you thank them for their time. Again, I highly recommend that the project team and especially developers take the time to observe this research when you can, because you can see the whys behind the UX recommendations firsthand. And you can learn more about conducting usability testing specifically for XR on my website. I've included that link in the PDF handout that you're getting. And then you take all of that valuable feedback and all of those learnings that you got out of your testing of your prototype and work as a team to decide what you'll actually build. You're not going to take every little bit of feedback people give you and make it so. You have to take into account the entire experience, the UX best practices, and the budget and the time constraints and so forth. And there is an art to this. So I do recommend that you have a UX researcher help you with this part, to take your learnings from your testing and translate that into recommendations for design changes. Then you build that thing. And as mentioned before, this should be a cyclical and continuous process throughout the life cycle of your product or your service, not a one and done deal at the end of the project when it's already built and you can't make changes. And at some point, if you haven't already, you're going to learn the Agile methodology. And I would like to point out that UX and Agile can work together. You can read more about it in my UX playbook for XR on my website. And I've also included some resources in that PDF handout so you can learn more about how Agile and UX work together. And you can learn more about gaming UX specifically by getting The Gamer's Brain by Celia Hoden. She talks about the neuroscience behind gaming, UX strategy, and best practices specifically for gaming. And we use this as kind of a textbook in that free labs class that I stream on Thursdays, just not today. And what I've given you today has been a high-level overview of the methods and the process. And again, the methods that you use will depend on the complexity of the problem you're trying to solve. And I highly recommend Innovating for People by Luma Institute as a reference. It's a great little handbook that's broken down by the type of problem you're trying to solve to help you decide which methods to use when. And it's a quick and easy read. And their website has the meat of the content, but the book is a great reference guide for you. I have it myself. I love it. It's another one of those books that keeps disappearing when the team wants to look at it. It's a very quick read. You have little reference and it gives you why you would want to do it when and so forth. And if you have the funds for their companion website, Luma Workshop, that is an awesome resource to help you plan out your actual research. And I've included that link in the show note, in that PDF. And now that we've gone over the value of UX to the development process and we've seen a high level of what that looks like in practice, I'd like to impart onto you some advice based on many years as a designer working with developers. Most importantly, for both designers and developers, is to have humility, stay humble. Remember that there's not just one solution to any given problem. You may think that your design solution's the best, but maybe it's not. You can get some amazing ideas from people who don't think the same way you do. So tap into that. That's the point of having multiple people on your team. And designers, work with developers, don't fight them. If you're presenting UX research-driven solutions and you're not getting the reception that you need, start again with education. Show some examples of some past projects if you have them and how you've worked together with your teammates. Show some outcomes that came from that and ask them how they would like to work together. And be willing to adjust your work process or your deliverables to meet their needs, as long as you're not, of course, compromising the science behind the methods of the research and so forth. Also, try not to be so stuck in what your definition of necessary deliverables are. It really depends on the team and on the individual developer, so be adaptable to that. And that may come with more experience. But for example, I've had developers who were very, very good at visual, had very good visual eye, and so I would not need to redline. And redlining is when you mark out on your design every little pixel. Not every developer needs that because they have a very good eye. So it depends on the developer. So you need to understand your developer and how you can work together, because that saved a ton of time on work that I didn't need to do because they already had a good eye. And that may come with more experience, but remember that your UX methods aren't just for the end product or the service. They're also for the team that you're working with to improve your internal processes and your way of working. So you can use user-centered design on your actual team, not just the products. So be open to that and adapt as needed. And this advice goes both ways. The more the UX designer understands about development, the better you can communicate with development. And the more the developer knows about UX, the better you can collaborate and communicate with your UX professionals. And the goal is not to replace each other's jobs. It's not to dig into the details and the rabbit holes to become experts in the skill sets for yourself, unless, of course, you're thinking about a career switch. The intent is to understand and enable more effective teamwork. And that will then improve your decision-making as a team. And it will help you prioritize tasks in your backlog more effectively. And there is a lot more that I could go over, but we don't have time to go through it all today. I've created that list of links to reference in that PDF that's going to be shared out with you in that email. And you can read all of the best practices that I've published so far on my website, the UX for XR Toolkit. Again, the link is in there in the PDF. And here you can learn more about transitioning into XR from a UX designer's perspective, and you can learn the UX best practices for XR and dive deeper into the video lessons. And you can see how others have solved XR design problems with the growing pattern library, and more content is being added regularly to that. And you can also take the, if you want to learn some of the prototyping tools, you can take the interaction design class that's here at Circuit Stream. So they go over several prototyping tools. And be sure to follow me on all the things so that you can stay up to date on the content and resources I'm adding regularly. And that is also, all these links are in the PDF as well. And I will turn it back over to Brendan for Q&A.
Excellent. Alitha, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your presentation today. Very informative. Have you ever, I have a quick question. Have you ever come across or worked on a team where there was kind of like a conflict there between yourself and maybe one of the developers?
Yes.
Okay, and how were you
Yes.
able to resolve that?
Sometimes. Not always.
Oh,
So it depends on the developer, and I've also the problems that I had more of was when I was less experienced. But as I gained more experience, I learned more how to communicate. Um, so there's one where multiple people worked with the developer trying to get the developer to understand UX, but they just, I don't know, nobody could. So that was an unsuccessful example, but that's the rare example, I think. When you sit down and you understand them and you tell them how you work, like what I was saying, it's usually pretty great, because then as I think that the conflict mostly comes from them not understanding how we work and that we're not their enemy. We come in peace. Once they understand that, then it's a lot easier to work together.
yeah, for sure. I mean, it's tough when I guess someone is stubborn or maybe wants to stay in their own lane and not necessarily
Yeah,
learn about other processes. But yeah, that was
yeah.
very helpful. So thank you for sharing. I'll definitely bring you back on for the Q&A. I just want to go over a few of our courses, course details, and some of the resources that we have as well. I will see you again very shortly.
Okay.
Alrighty. Excellent. So first thing I wanted to do after that was just post an additional um, poll here. So on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this workshop? So I will post that now. And again, this is feedback that helps us just kind of understand what content you want to see more of, as well as just making sure that we are bringing you valuable information in this space. So if you go ahead and submit your poll answer, that would be very helpful. Now, I want to shed more light on our courses and programs, starting with our self-directed AR course. So it's a short course. If you're looking to get started in AR and complete your first AR project, check out this 6-part AR video course. It is very much self-directed and meant to just be very accessible for getting started in this space. Now, for anyone wanting to expand their XR horizons, CircuitStream has a number of course offerings meant to equip students and professionals with the skills to either pursue their own immersive projects or develop the necessary skill sets to pursue a career in the XR industry. So our XR development with Unity course is a live instructor-led curriculum with plenty of avenues for enduring support for both students and alumni. It is a project and portfolio-driven learning experience supplemented with opportunities to acquire an XR industry-specific certification through CircuitStream. The course is priced at $3,950 US, and our next cohorts will be launching on May 17th. Now, each of our beginner-friendly XR courses is structured very similarly. So with our interaction design and prototyping course, you can expect the same project-driven, live instructor-led format, complete with its own specific certification path for artists and designers. The course is also priced at $3,950, and the next cohort will be launching on April 20th. Now, either of our 10-week XR courses are very much beginner-friendly. No previous design or development experience is required to get started. So beginners have no fear. Anyone who is interested in this space and developing that skill, these skills are more than welcome to join. And then one more quick note about our 10-week courses is we have the standalone option, but we also currently are offering a plus package, which includes one of our XR Dev or XR Interaction Design courses, but also our C# Scripting Fundamentals course. That's a 4-week short course focusing entirely on the fundamentals of C#, as well as 10 hours of dedicated one-on-one time with an instructor, which we recommend using for project support or further mentorship on XR concepts. So for the bundle, it is $4,950. And then I want to mention we are currently at the tail end of a March Madness sale. So for either of these packages, we can also apply a 15% discount under our March Madness sale. Lastly, our 24-week Unity Developer Bootcamp will be launching on April 11th and will prepare you for a 3D development career. You'll learn C# coding logic. You'll build over 10 projects, including one that is your very own concept. And there is tons of one-on-one career service support. You'll also receive 2 certifications. So one would be from Circuit Stream, and then the other would be from Unity directly. So I'll share a little bit more about what that looks like. We have tons of flexibility around tuition and payment for any of our flagship courses. So for international students, we have 3, 6, and 12-month monthly payment plans available. For any students in the US, we have Climb, our financing partner. They offer loans available for up to 5-year terms for anyone eligible or who has a co-borrower eligibility. And then just regarding certifications, I wanted to give everyone an idea of the certifications you can attain through our flagship courses. So here's just a quick snapshot of the certification path offered, through each of our flagships. The Unity Developer Bootcamp would, upon graduation, provide you with a Unity Developer certification from CircuitStream, as well as a Certified Associate Programmer certification directly from Unity. We also have our XR Development with Unity course. Graduates would receive the XR Developer certification from CircuitStream, and with our XR Interaction Design and Prototyping course, you'd receive the XR Designer certification. Now, personally, one of my favorite parts about the education we provide has to be our CircuitStream community. So it's a great place to network, collaborate, or participate in events like game jams. It's also where the enduring support for students as well as alumni resides. So we have open office hours 5 times a week with our instructors that are available to existing students, as well as all of our alumni. So that's lifetime access. Now, this is great for continued learning, for troubleshooting, as well as project support. And I want to give a massive shout out to Arki, our student experience coordinator, who is also mixing things up regularly in there with coffee hours, showcases, and events like Demo Day, where our students are invited to share their personal projects and stories. So if you're looking to get a closer look, you can download the syllabus for any of our courses on our website at www.circuitstream.com or any of our affiliate university websites listed here. Now, if you have any specific questions or want to learn more, you can speak with any of our enrollment advisors as well. So Tyler, Stella, Leanne, myself, Rohim, or Ro, Marvell, and Shoshana would all love to chat with you about your learning goals and how CircuitStream may be able to help with that. Lastly, before the Q&A, I just want to send out a thank you, a massive thank you to everyone joining us today. Massive thank you to Alitha for sharing that presentation and delivering us some great information. So we'll get into the Q&A. It looks like we do have a few questions here for you, Alitha. So if you want to jump back on stage and tackle those, that would be wonderful. Awesome. So the first question, and I can't. Here we go. So Anil's question, if you want to be an XR designer, would you recommend mastering the traditional 2D design process and then jumping into XR? That's a great question.
So I'm trying to think if there are any classes by our any of the college partners that CircuitStream has that teach UX design with XR. I'm not sure if there are. So you're going to need to learn UX potentially separately until someone does create a program like that, because I don't think there is one right now. But there are a lot of things, the design process, it's only varied depending on whether you're doing it for XR versus traditional 2D. The best practices are going to be different because you're using different platforms and different interactions. So there will be some things that I would recommend learning both, because the more you learn about traditional 2D design, the more that you can understand where to break the rules, learn the rules to break the rules for 3D, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, would it be wrong to say that there are concepts that would apply to both, but each kind of platform would require also a very kind of different approach as well?
Yeah, all of the skills, if you're coming and you already have a traditional 2D design experience, you it's basically the same process. You're just translating to a different platform. So there are going to be some things that change. Best practices are going to be different, just like they're different if you're working on an Android versus an iOS versus desktop. There's going to be different best practices for interaction. But the overall process that I showed, the research, design, test, iterate, all of that, that's going to be the same regardless. And then there are some foundational UX best practices that are universal across anything that you do. And those things that you want to learn regardless, and methods you want to learn regardless, those are going to work for pretty much any platform. But then once you get into which one you're doing and what your circumstances are, you'll need to know which one to use when.
Okay, right on. Awesome. Well, Neil, I thank you for your question, and thank you for the answer, Alitha. So the next question is from Emery. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But what are the fundamental differences between conventional UX design? Oh, here we go. This is kind of what you were just digging into, and UX design for XR. Are there any unique pain points you experienced as a UX designer?
Fundamental differences between conventional UX design. I actually prefer XR design. Probably because I've been doing traditional 2D for so many years. I'm tired of it. And I prefer XR now. Um, Unique pain points. Um, I would say they're more on the 2D side than on the XR side because of all of that. I was mentioning redlining and so forth earlier. Redlining is what you do from a graphic design standpoint, where you mark up how many pixels something needs to be in size so that the front end developers can then go create that thing at that size and space everything out. That's one of my pain points with design. Um, as far as UX design, which is the whole process of making it usable, um, for XR, I can't think of any unique pain points. There are going to be some unique things, like you wouldn't think to include vomit bags and cold water in your usability testing for 2D, but it's definitely something you need for XR.
Yeah, that would be a pain point for the
Yeah,
user for sure.
for the user, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, great, Emery. Thank you. We have another question. I can't post it for some reason, but it's from Andrew.
Maybe they withdrew it.
It's still showing up here, but it's are there UX XR developers? Seems a logical fusion as opposed to having UX and XR developers only. So I think he's asking more so about like the like are there
Hybrid.
UX UI roles already for XR or
I
are
think
they
he's
UX generalists that would be moving into like the XR space?
Well, there are already jobs for UX for XR. They're already out there. Microsoft, Facebook, and I think Google or Meta now. Sorry, I keep saying Facebook. Meta are hiring UX designers, but I think he's asking if there is a hybrid developer with UX and XR developer. I think
Oh, I
is
see.
what
Yeah, that
they're
that makes more
asking.
sense. Yeah.
Um, there may be, but they're going to be rare because each is such a science developing. I can't develop. I is a different part of your brain. It is something that I just can't get into that deep rabbit hole of. Now, front like some light coding or non-coding development work, yeah, but if you're getting into that coding, it's a completely different side of the brain. So you may have some, but they're going to be rare. There are UX designers that do Unity and that can prototype with code, but again, it's not as common as you would think because there's such different ways of thinking. Now, maybe that will merge some way in the future. It's kind of like, I think of it kind of like how when we started out with the web, I'm showing my age now. Started back in the web, and designers had to code HTML because you coded HTML in Netscape Navigator and Notepad. They didn't have all of the developer tools they have now for the web, and so we had to code if we wanted to do anything. So that's how it is right now. But things like tools like ShapesXR are coming out where you don't have to do that anymore. And Unity has the bolt and things like that, so you don't have to code. But once you get into that back end, your logic and your algorithms and all that, designers are going to have more of a problem with that because that's a different part of your brain, and they may not have the interest in even going there because they're more visual and they want to do more of the research and the dealing with the people and stuff, whereas developers like to sit there and stare at code because that's what they love. And it's kind of a personality thing that it might be a little different, and so that's going to be a rare thing. I don't know if that was a good answer or not.
Yeah, and it sounds like that those are two like completely almost separate responsibilities and processes, right? So
Yes, they are.
to take on.
Because
Sorry, go ahead.
because ideally on your team you're both working on something, but if you're doing both, that is a lot of work. It's already a lot of work to develop, and it's already a lot of work to do the UX research and the design. You can tag team and you can pair up and work together more effectively than if one person's doing everything. And you can get better perspectives and you're calling each other out respectfully, of course, on things more effectively with paired UX and development than if you had one doing everything.
Yeah, okay, perfect. That makes perfect sense. So Andrew, if you're looking to fulfill that role, make sure you ask for twice the salary because I
And
think it's
twice
going to
the
be.
coffee.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, great. And then we have another question from Emery. Do you think having any design background, for instance, architectural, industrial design, is helpful for XR developers?
For the developer side, I think yes. I think it would be very beneficial. That doesn't mean if you're a developer, go learn those things. But if you have a design background and you're wanting to switch to development, that's a good, especially anything 3D. But any kind of design is going to help you because it's going to give you a better eye on what you're creating.
Yeah, you can kind of take the experience you have with design
Yeah.
and really think about, you know, how you approach developing something. I think that would only help you for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it goes both ways too. Anything that a UX professional can understand about Unity development, that doesn't mean they have to go learn unless they want to back end Unity development. The more they understand, the more effective you can make those decisions and understand where you can push back or not push back on certain design desires or whatever. It's only going to help.
Yeah, for sure, makes total sense. We just got another question here from Anil, asking another one. How does learning Blender versus Shapes XR work?
So Blender's more for creating your models, your actual models. You can rig them, add bones, and so that they will animate in Unity or some other program. Shapes is where you're creating an actual environment. You're bringing models in to Shapes. You can create basic models in there, but it's more for creating environments and prototyping and testing out spaces, placing things to test out where you would place them in your environment, and designing in VR versus staring at a 2D screen. Blender's a 2D screen that you're staring at and looking at, and you're having to move this camera around all different angles to try to see. Sorry, I bumped my mic. To try to see, it's harder to do in 2D than it is in 3D. So that's where Shapes XR comes in, and you can actually design out your spaces in there and see it in to size instead of staring at it on a 2D screen.
Yeah, so big difference there. Blender would be for being able to create assets like
Models,
from
yeah,
complete scratch and like animate or import
yeah.
to other programs. Um,
And
versus
Shapes doesn't animate. It doesn't add bones or anything like that. Sorry.
no, that's perfect. So yeah, I think that answers Anil's question. Uh, Question from Talia. What would you say about the relationship between architectural design and UX XR design?
architectural design is going to really come in handy for you for designing spaces. So if part of your job as the UX designer on the team is to help design those spaces, which you'll have some say in it, especially because if you're an architectural designer, you're going to know way more about flow of space and all of that stuff, and that's going to only be beneficial to you. It's especially beneficial to you. Interior design's another one that's going to be really beneficial to you, learning about the flow of space for creating those experiences in XR. Did that help?
I think so. Let's check some of the chat. Thank you for the answer. No code XR, maybe. Good answer. Yeah, okay. Talia says thank you. So thank you, Alitha.
Yeah, no code XR. They in that interaction design class that Circuit Stream does, they do teach you Unity without code. It uses a system called Bolt, I believe, that you can learn to prototype in Unity without code.
Yeah, similar to Unreal Engine's visual
Yeah.
scripting. So that way you don't have to learn a new vocabulary, learn a new language per se.
Which is very desirable for designers.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. Okay, great. And then I don't think we have any additional questions. Give our audience another moment just to ask. Think of any other questions that you have. Going once, going twice. Okay, I think that's about it, Alitha. So again, thank you very much for imparting your wisdom on us today. For our audience, thank you so much for joining us. We will, run more workshops. We run them very frequently and very consistently. So keep an eye out on our site for any upcoming workshops, and we'd love to see you out there again. For now, until next time, have yourselves a wonderful rest of your days, nights, evenings, mornings, wherever you're located. Have yourself, a great rest of the day here.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Brendan.
Yeah. Thank you, and goodbye for now.
Bye.